Right. Hi there, guys. And guys and gals, this is the latest of my projects that I've just finished. It's a 1982 Grundig 2x4 Super video recorder. Right. The reason why I've restored this, if anyone knows me, you'll know that I really don't like working on video recorders, but I like to get stuff off old videotapes for the content for my YouTube channel. So Aidan, you've already got a VHS and Betamax machine. They're both working. Well, yes, I do. The reason why I've restored this is because it ain't VHS, it ain't Betamax. It is Video 2000. Now, Video 2000 was a third format. It was developed in about 1978-79, released in 79. And the reason why is because Philips wanted to get, JVC had released VHS, Sony had released Betamax. They'd both been around in the US and North America for some time, and in 1978, summer or autumn 1978, they both landed here in Europe, including here in the UK, because they developed machines that were compatible with our TV standards. But the reason why this exists is because Philips already had a format before called N1500, well, actually called VCR, but we call it N1500 now, which had square cassettes. So they didn't have square cassettes. They didn't have tape. They didn't have reels of tape side by side in a cassette. They had one reel on top of another. I don't have any of those machines, but go on Google Images, type in Philips N1500, and you'll see it. Now, the problem with those machines is that the longest tape time they had was about 60 minutes, right, which is really nothing in comparison to VHS and Betamax, which had at that time a maximum 3-hour recording time, later 4 hours. If you want to record a whole TV series or a film or a football match or something, which tend to total about 2 or 3 hours in length, then it's obvious which format you'd go for. Philips, so as soon as VHS and Betamax were released here, Philips knew that they were onto a loser. So what they did was they came up with this. Sorry, Philips and Grundig. Sorry, not Philips and Betamax. What am I on about? Philips and Grundig realised that they were onto a loser, so they came up with this format, officially called VCC, which is Video Compact Cassette, but also it can be called, if I just lift the cover off, Video 2000, which is the more common name for it, or V2000 as it's sometimes called. Right, not really that much to say about it. Picture quality and sound quality wise, no more or less, no better or worse than VHS or Betamax. Right, but one distinctive feature it has, which hasn't been replicated by any other video format as far as I know out there. Well, I'll explain it like this. If you're thinking that this looks a little bit like an audio tape, an audio cassette that you used to push into your ghetto blaster or into your car stereo or whatever back in the 80s or 90s, but just looks like a bigger version of that, the design isn't entirely coincidental. Philips invented the audio cassette, which they called the ACC, the Audio Compact Cassette, sometime in the early 60s. Then they, and in the development of Video 2000, they were leading the way. They did it in conjunction with Grundig, who made this, but they led the way. And what they decided was to replicate audio cassette but in video form. One of the distinctive features of audio cassettes was that you could record on both sides. Now notice the number 2 up there. There's a reason for that, because you can record on both sides with this, which you couldn't do. So they didn't own. So put it like this: 2 hours. 2 sides, 4 hours each side. That's 8 hours. That's an 8-hour cassette. Given that at the time VHS and Betamax were both just starting to get a maximum of 4 hours, which was the absolute technical maximum they could do, I think. I think that later on VHS released 5 hours, but even still, this 8 hours knocked VHS and Betamax out of the park. Didn't just beat them, it knocked them completely out of the park. Right, and what's more, no less, still maintaining the same picture quality. Later on, towards the end of the format's life, Grundig, in about 1984-85, Grundig released a video machine that could actually do twin speed, which is where you could record at 2 speeds, standard speed, or long play, which allowed you to have about twice the amount of content on a cassette, because it moved the tape at half the speed while it was recording, and therefore the same speed as it was playing back. So that then meant, if this is 8 hours, 4 hours on 2 sides, that meant that by then, for the long play version of this machine, you could record 8 hours both sides, 16 hours in total. Given at the time, still in the early 80s, even in the mid 80s, TV stations tended to close down at around midnight, and then would be off the air for about 8 hours, up to about 8 o'clock. 8 o'clock in the morning. That's obviously 8 hours off the air. 24 hours minus 8 is 16. You could get a whole day's worth of TV on one tape, provided you flip the tape over halfway during the day. So yeah, which would be about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So yeah, this format knocked VHS and Betamax out the park completely. Other couple of things, these had automatic rewind, so when it got to the end of the tape, one of these tape end sensors down here, I think that's one of them, would detect the end of the tape, and it would automatically unthread the tape, and it would start rewinding. When VHS or Betamax machines did that, at that time, they would automatically detect it and then unlace the tape, but they wouldn't rewind. They would just sit there waiting for you to press the rewind button or the eject button or whatever. Automatic rewind, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong out there, but I don't think it was ever a thing on Betamax. VHS did have it, but not until about the late 80s, I want to say. Whereas these, on both Grundig and Philips machines, had it right from the start, 1979. Also, another thing, one other feature that was a advancement over VHS and Betamax at the time, if I get down here, is this program search. What used to happen, let me just get on there. What used to happen whenever you recorded something on one of these is it would record an index marker at the start of each recording, so that in case you'd taped a TV series like, I don't know, Taggart or something, if you taped a series, it would have an automatic electronic marker recorded in the electronic video signal. When you were looking for your favourite episode of Taggart on one of these tapes, it meant that you didn't have to keep fast forwarding and rewinding to find the start of your favourite episode, assuming it wasn't the first one recorded on the tape. What you would do is you'd press that, and it would automatically wind through the tape, finding each recording marker point. Sorry if you can hear Reggie barking. It would find each recorder marker point at the start of each recording. It would start playing each time that it found one of those, and all that you'd have to do is press that enough times until you found the start of your favourite episode. There we are. And that did eventually become a feature on VHS. I don't think it became a feature on Betamax, simply because Betamax died out before it could advance to this kind of thing. But VHS, which technically speaking is actually quite similar to Betamax, didn't have this until about, I've not seen it on VHS machines until about the late 90s, early 2000s, and this is an early 80s machine. So it's about 10 or 15 years advanced. Right, and one more feature that these had, which is now starting to become a bit of a pain, is that these had automatic tracking, a variant of automatic tracking. The downside to that, if you remember VHS and Betamax with automatic tracking, is that one time out of every 10 tapes it wouldn't get the automatic tracking right, and you had a manual tracking control, usually under a flap somewhere on the front of the machine, and you had to manually override it by adjusting that. These have automatic tracking, but they don't have a manual override, which means that if the machine gets the tracking wrong, you're pretty much stuck. You are pretty much stuck with interference on the picture. Tough shit. Right, but there we are. Okay, one last thing. The reason why I specifically chose this model of machine over a Philips one is because the Philips ones, while they are more reliable electronically, the mechanical reliability is quite, I hear, is quite bad. Some opinions differ, but I suppose it just depends on experiences. I decided to go for one of these and another one of these for tape transfer. I got a second one, you know, just in case one of them happens to break down when I'm doing tape transfers. I got one of these because this mechanism does look more reliable. There's less to it, and it looks more solidly built than the Philips ones that I've seen from fellow collectors. Less to it, and yeah, there's less to it, so there's less to go wrong. Right, but yeah, there we are. Hope you enjoyed that.